Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we'll be looking at Rachel's story, specifically Rachel's death, in Genesis chapter 35 in our continuing study of the book of Genesis. As we've looked over the story of Jacob, the Jacob narrative, we started back at the top of our outline with the birth of twins, and then there was the interlude, and then Jacob's life laid out for us. We're not going to go through each step, but notice we started with the birth of Jacob, and now we're coming not to the death of Jacob, but to the death of Rebekah's nurse, but also the death of Rachel. And whereas at the beginning Jacob had been named, and he had been named Jacob, heel grabber, even though we've seen him named earlier in this when he had that encounter with God and the angel in chapter 32, now he's named again. It's another telling of the same story, just to fit the pattern of the entire layout of Jacob's story. So Genesis 35 verse 2, so Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, put away the foreign gods which are among you. Now you say, wait a minute, where did they begin to have foreign gods? Well, we had read of how Rachel had stolen her father's teraphim, the idols belonging to her father. And perhaps when they had been at Shechem and near the Canaanites, maybe they had picked up other idols as well. We don't know about that. But Jacob says, put away the foreign gods which are among you, and purify yourselves, and change your garments, and let us arise and go up to Bethel. See, he had come and camped in the neighborhood of that Canaanite city. Now he's going to go to the place where he saw the vision of the ladder. Go up to Bethel, and I will make an altar there to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and has been with me wherever I have gone. So they gave to Jacob all the foreign gods which they had, and the rings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was near Shechem. Now his call for purity is a regular theme in the scriptures, but we have to ask, he hid them under an oak. Is that the proper thing? Is there a negative slant in the story where he hides them instead of maybe just destroying them? Well, we're not told. However, chapter 35, verse 10, then God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Padan Aram, and he blessed him. So here again we have another telling, a reiteration of the covenant. And God said to him, your name is Jacob. You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name, unless he called him Israel. Now we saw how that first took place, but this is sort of giving a balance to the beginning of the story where he is named Jacob, and now at the end of the story where he's named Israel. So it's a retelling of the story. And perhaps right here God is appearing to him again. But so you say, which is it? It's both. God also said to him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come forth from you. And so this is what had been given to Abraham, to Isaac, but do you notice how there's something new that's added? Kings shall come forth from you. I can't think of a place where Abraham or Isaac had specifically been told that. Yes, they would be the father of many nations, but here they're going to be kings as well that come from this line. And so the call is to be fruitful and multiply. And of course, where have we seen those words before? We saw them all the way back in Genesis chapter 1, and again after Noah came out of the ark with his family. Be fruitful and multiply. And so again, this is being given this time to Jacob. The land which I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I will give it to you, and I will give the land to your descendants after you. So there's a promise, there's a command, be fruitful, but now there's a promise also of the land. Then they journeyed from Bethel, and when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath, they're going southward to a place called Ephrath. It's near and it's associated with Bethlehem. Rachel began to give birth, and she suffered severe labor. Now, we haven't really read that much about Rachel. The last thing that was specific to her that we read about was when she had stolen her father's teraphim. And you remember she had done that without her husband's knowledge. And Jacob, not knowing that his wife, his beloved Rachel, had stolen them, had said, "Hey, whoever stole those, let that person be put to death." Well, here his words have prophetic significance. She begins to give birth, and she suffered severe labor, verse 17. When she was in severe labor, the midwife said to her, "Do not fear, for now you have another son." It came about as her soul was departing, for she died, she's going to die here, that she named him Benoi. Ben is the word for son of my sorrows. But his father called him, his father's going to change that, called him Benjamin, Benyamin, son of my right hand. And the right hand, that's a place of honor. And so that's the name that sticks. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath. And just in case you don't know what it is, there's an editorial comment. That is Bethlehem. Now, Rachel's untimely death, we already noted, is a part of a curse that had unwittingly been placed on her by Jacob. Chapter 31, verse 32, Jacob said, "The one with whom you find your God shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what's yours among my belongings. Take it for yourself." Because Jacob said that because he didn't know that Rachel had stolen them. And so now we see Rachel dying in childbirth. Rachel then is buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. And a later reference to Rachel weeping for her children is going to look back at her death, but it will also be a byword to point to untimely deaths in Bethlehem. So that it's an expression, we use expressions. We talk about George Washington chopping down the cherry tree, and that's sort of a picture of honesty, not because he chopped it down, but because supposedly, according to the folk legend, he told the truth about it. Well, Rachel weeping for her children is an expression describing great sorrow, and Jeremiah is going to use that, picturing the sorrow of Israel being conquered and taken into captivity, and yet there's a parallel to that, there's an echo of that, when in the New Testament, great loss is experienced in Bethlehem because Herod is trying to kill the Messiah, the infant Jesus, and to do so, he orders the slaying of a number of infants in and around Bethlehem. On the other hand, we have a son at the right hand. That's what Benjamin means, remember? And he came from Bethlehem, and he became a curse for us. Not because he had done anything wrong, but he took our curse upon himself. So that, as we look at the Rachel story, we're reminded of a parallel, not so much with Rachel, but between Jacob and Jesus. You see, Jacob was the younger brother. Jesus is our elder brother. Jacob sought to steal the blessing that belonged to another. Jesus sought to share the blessing that was rightfully his. In Jacob's case, he took on the flesh of a goat in order to accomplish the deception. Remember, he covered himself in goat skins. In Jesus' case, he took on flesh, human flesh, in order to accomplish our salvation. In Jacob's case, he has a vision of a ladder between heaven and earth. Jesus is the ladder, the way between heaven and earth. Jacob starts his family with 12 sons that grow and prosper until he takes them home. Jesus starts with 12 disciples that continue to grow and prosper, and his church has grown to fill the whole world until finally one day he's going to take us home. Jacob was known for his deceit and his deceitful tactics. Jesus was known for his innocence, yes, betrayed by deceit, by the deceitful Judas, but did that in order to take on our guilt. Jacob struggles with an angel and he sees the face of God. Jesus submits to the Father so that we might see the face of God. Jacob can only love the lovely, and he meets his perfect, pure, and beautiful bride at a well. He doesn't care that much for Leah. He just goes for the outward appearance. Jesus, by contrast, meets an imperfect, unclean, unlovely woman at the well, whom he will make perfect and clean and lovely enough to be his bride. And he did it for her, and he will do it for us as well. Jacob rolls away the stone that no man could, the stone at the well. Jesus rolled away the stone covering his empty tomb, the stone that no man could.